following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back. God's Miracle with Randy Lerch. And I've got God's Miracle with me on the line. Randy Lerch, how are you, sir?
I'm doing better and better every day, Ralph. Thank you for asking, my friend. Man, God is good. I'm blessed with my book. Is just, it's gaining more and more energy, and being able to spread the word about, what God's hope has given me by helping people with drug and alcohol abuse. So, thank you for asking, my friend.
Okay. Well, let's get off the book and stay on the book at the same time. Get off the book's title, but I'm taking a lot of what I'm going to ask you from having gone through the book. And tonight I want to talk about changes in a world-class athlete's body over the course of his career, in this case, your career, and how you picked up, I want to say, as your body changes, your mind also changes. So even if, say, you're losing a step or two on your fastball, what you learned about pitching compensates for that. So can you take us through, from a very young age, the adjustments that you had to make along the line based on physical stuff, and how what you learned mentally helped get you through it?
I think, and that's a question that I'm kind of it's kind of a deep question to be able to think where you're starting from, and then, like you said, by the end of your career. And one of the biggest things for me, not just the physical part, is the going from where you're younger and there wasn't as many people involved, and then you moved up into the minor leagues where there's probably 500 people in the stands, and then once you get up into to the major leagues and you walk on the field for the first time, and there can be 50,000 people in the stands, and not only do you have to think about calming yourself physically, but you've got to be able to calm yourself, mentally and physically, to not overthrow the ball and to make sure you stay under control throughout the process.
Do you or did you depend heavily on the day-to-day teachings of a coach, him watching you and seeing if you're doing anything differently? What's the communication like between pitcher and pitching coach?
The way we did it was such a disciplined routine. I'll talk about the major leagues, because in the minor leagues they had they were more with kind of traveling pitching coaches, where they just they traveled from location to location, league to league. But
they call them rovers, if I'm not
they called them rovers, yes. And so we had the roving instructors in the minor leagues, but then when you made it up to the major leagues, it was really a routine. And then me being a starter, you pitched every 5 days, and you would, you started the game, but then the next day you're as sore as can be, but not quite as sore as you're going to be the following day or the second day after you pitch. And then that's the day that the pitching coach gets you out on the side. You're so sore you can't even imagine it, and then tries to work out the kinks and talk to you about, the mistakes you made during your last appearance, your last start, and try to make adjustments for it. And then the next day, the third day, was the day to relax, and then the day before, and then you went and got them again, and you just did that. And I think the most games I started one year was 35 games, which is quite a bit, and what 215 innings. So you just did that over and over.
Did you throw between starts?
Yes, I did, and I was somebody that I was bad at not really working on my art. I just wanted to get out there and just get the kinks loosened up. I was more of a fastball power pitcher, so I would throw on that the second day after, get the kinks out, and then go and start the game on the fifth day. But we threw every day in between starts.
Okay. Did your routine depend a lot on what went on in your last start? In other words, were you looking to correct stuff? What went through your head when you were throwing on the sidelines?
You tried to work on the things that you struggled with in the game. You tried to, like, if your curveball wasn't working good, you might be rushing on it. Then you tried to work on pausing in your delivery. You talked to the pitching coach. He talked to you about situations. If you got into a bunt situation and you didn't cover a bag like the way you should have, or you didn't pay attention to making sure runners weren't getting too big of a lead or backing up bases, you would talk about that, and then also make sure that you're delivering, everything was intact, and you were ready to start the next game.
Who was the best pitching coach you ever had?
In the minor leagues, was the best pitching coach. His name was Bob Tiefenauer. I don't know if you remember him, Ralph. He was.
I remember the name he pitched in the 50s when I was growing up. I certainly do. What made him the best in your eyes?
I remember him like a father figure, because when I came up, I was barely 18 years old in the minor leagues, and then I first pitched in the major leagues at 20, and I was just a baby. I used to call Bob Tiefenauer, like my second dad. He would scold me when I needed it, but he also gave me the TLC. And then my first pitching coach in the major leagues was Ray Ripplemeyer. I don't know if you remember that name.
I remember it well. As a matter of fact, he was a guest recently on this network. Bill Kashatis, and he interviewed Ray Ripplemeyer very recently. So it's archived on the Comfortably Zoned channel on YouTube. So if anybody wants to listen to that interview, I will send you a link to it. All these years later, you'll be interested in hearing his voice.
I will, for sure.
Yeah. And he was how did he differ from Bob Tiefenauer in his coaching style?
I think that Ray Ripplemeyer was used to working with a veteran staff. Bob Tiefenauer was, he was a coach that worked with the younger kids and pitchers that's coming out of college. But, the Phillies, when I came up there, the Phillies had some very established pitchers. Of course, the number one, the guy that he won, I watched him win 3 Cy Young Awards, was Steve Carlson. But so I got to watch those. Of Steve, and then here's some
Randy,
names.
let me interrupt you for a second because the
Sure.
fans, me included, know very little about Steve Carlton, the person. He had a poor relationship with the press, either for one reason or another. He didn't communicate with them, or they with he. So we have, as fans, as historians, have lost a lot of learning about what he was like, not just on the field, but off the field. Tell me some stories about him and what he was like in the clubhouse.
Well, I can. I'm glad you asked that question because I can tell the fans, and this is the true inside story because I was fairly close to Steve when I was with the Phillies. Back in the day when Philadelphia, I think they had, my goodness, between New Jersey, Delaware, and Philadelphia, we had like 6 daily newspapers that covered the team, and you know the great competition of all the writers and stuff. And Steve went out and set records. What was it? The year that he won like 26 or 27 games and lost 10. For a team that only won like 60-some games with the Phillies, and
highest percentage over the team's winning loss percentage in baseball. I don't know if that's been broken, but that was an amazing feat.
Yes, and it was one of the greatest feats ever, and still stands maybe like you said today. And what Steve did is he was, he'd been traded from St. Louis, so he decided with that great year he was having, he was going to spend as much time, all the time you could imagine with the press, even staying late after the games and talking to them, and gave him great interviews, and then the next year he lost 20 games. And the press was as good as they were to him. They were as brutal they were, and he took it personally. And he thought, "Boy, I talked to you guys. It took all that time, and now you guys have turned on me." And like I said, he took it personal. And the following year is when he decided he wasn't going to talk to him anymore.
All right. What was he like with his fellow with his teammates?
Steve was a different player or person that most of the people saw that didn't know him. He was a funny guy, a personable guy, and he was a real good teammate. He was, we used to love to go out to dinner with Steve and Tim McCarver and shoot on that team. The pitching staff was Jim Cott. Tim McCarver was Steve's personal catcher in 3 years, and so Tim, we call him Timmy, and Steve, and then Jim Cott, and we had as far as an older pitchers, and a lot of the older guys, and they allowed me actually to tag along. Went out to dinner, and we just I learned a lot from the guys. I even learned how that at the end of the day, everybody. Everybody split up their ticket and split their tip. I learned that at a young age, too, and that was way a lot more than I could afford, actually.
Sometimes it's better to stay in the room.
That's right. But he was a lot of fun.
I'm sure you could have gotten into a little bit less trouble if you'd have stayed in the room every now and again. I'm sure there was...
I was taught. I got a little funny story for you about Steve Carlton. When Steve was, he as being a rookie, he's going to put me, under his arm, and so we went to Montreal to play in an Olympic Stadium. They had the longest dugout. I think the dugout it was actually field level, so you just got up, you stood up from the seat, and there was the field right in front of you, and I think, boy, I'll tell you what, I'll bet you that dugout, the seat was about 100 feet long or wide, however you want to look at it. But Steve just said, "Well, let's go." He said, "Let's go get some pizza after the game." And I said, "Well, okay, I mean, shoot, man, I don't get to go out with Steve Carlton." And so we went to a pizza place, and he ordered us some garlic soup. And we ate garlic soup, and I didn't think nothing of it, but the next day we reeked so bad. Our breath was so bad that the guys begged us, and they actually had taken a picture during the game, and they showed Carlton and I all the way, just him and I, at the other end of the whole dugout, and then the rest of the team we were at one end, he was at the other, and the team was at the other end, and from that time on, they never would let us forget that.
That's great. That's Hall of Fame pitcher you communicated with. You had a number of Hall of Fame teammates. Tell me about some of the others.
Well, we had Mike Schmidt was the Hall of Fame third baseman, and he was real quiet. Mike was quiet. Mike was very cerebral. He really worked on his craft. In batting practice, he made sure that before he started hitting home runs or anything, he had everything together, was hitting the ball all over the place. So we had Mike on that Phillies team. Of course, I played with Pete Rose. He's not in the Hall of Fame for reasons that everyone knows.
He might as well be at this point. Look at what's going on in the world in terms of ethics and what have you. Pete and Shoeless Joe Jackson and Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and maybe Palmeiro. A bunch of them should be in the Hall of Fame. That's just off the top of my head.
Well, I mean, you have to hit the ball, don't you? And I mean, Pete, for whatever they are saying Pete did and Pete admitted to, for me, he still went out and played and he accomplished those feats, and also the guys with the steroids. I mean, none of us are without sin, that's for sure. And but as I moved to, you're talking about Hall of Famers. When I was traded to the Milwaukee Brewers, you talk about a team. I mean, we had Paul Molitor, third baseman, who's a Hall of Famer now. We had Robin Yount, the shortstop, who's a Hall of Famer. We had Raleigh Fingers on that team, who's a Hall of Famer, and also my catcher that's just going to be. He's been nominated. He's been put in the Hall of Fame, and he will be inducted. I forget the date, but Ted Simmons, and he was my catcher.
Ted Simmons is not in the Sacramento Sports Hall of Fame. So let's put things into perspective.
Yeah, but Randy Lerch is. Randy Lerch is,
exactly. Tell me more about Pete Rose. He's in the Hall of Fame. What was he like when the fanfare wasn't there? What was he like in the clubhouse? Was he a good teammate?
He was. He was a great teammate. The one thing that I remember about Pete is, he gave the clubhouse an extra sense of confidence. Pete, the Phillies had come short with making a lot of playoff runs and stuff like that, or playoff runs, making it to the playoffs, but then losing in the playoffs. But then once Pete got there in 1980, he just brought an extra confidence because he had already won it. He'd already been there, and Pete just all you had to do was watch Pete and know you just felt like you were going to win.
He had that bravado, I guess, is a good way of describing it. The chin out. He'd be the guy that you'd follow into war if you were going to war.
He was a leader, that's for sure.
Yeah. Who were some of those who were underachievers that that just probably had the intensity of a Pete Rose, and very few people had that, but who were held back by their heads, had the physical capabilities? Anybody you could think of off the top of your head that fits?
Yeah, probably the guy you're talking to. You know, they called me a head case. My nickname was Blade, and Tim McCarver used to say, "Blade, would you just quit thinking so much?" You know, I was analyzing everything, and I think that, you know, if I just went out there and didn't try to overthink, I would have been a lot better player. I wasn't, you know, I can't really tell the other guys because I wasn't in their heads, but for sure. I wish that I would have been able to relax a little bit more on the field. I think because God had given me I could throw the ball 96, 97 miles an hour for a left-hander, and could throw the ball forever. I just, I wish that I would have been able to relax a little bit more on the field.
Well, let me rephrase the question because I'm curious about this. Did you come up with or played with someone whose athletic ability was so much better than the results that they got on the field? That you wonder, why isn't this guy a star? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a hard question, Ralph. That's a hard question to ask. I think there's a lot of guys.
It was a hard question to ask for me, I'll tell you that.
I mean, hard question to answer, I mean. Yeah. So, I'm going to take the fifth on that one.
Okay. All right. That's always better to take the fifth than to drink a fifth, especially with the theme of your life.
Yeah, no kidding.
We'll talk over the months and hopefully the years of this podcast in depth about this. But was there a moment when you realized that it was going to take some rehab, some change of whatever it was, your habits or this or that led to your courageous comeback, not as a player but as a man? What was the start of that? Was there a particular day or instance? The day I had, if you're talking about my addiction and stuff, the day that I was diagnosed with my cirrhosis, and knew after trying so many different times of being able to to try to conquer the addictions that I had, and failing, I just believe that God finally said, well, if you're not going to listen to conquering those or quitting those addictions, then I'm just going to go ahead and give you cirrhosis, and then if you don't quit, you're going to die for sure. And looking at my precious wife Maria in the eye and seeing the hurt on her face, that was all I needed, my friend. After 40 years of drinking, I quit on that day, and that's been 3.5 years. Wow, that's. I know you take it one day at a time, so if you look at it, 3.5 years doesn't sound as long as like 1,000 some odd days. So if you look at it that way, wow, congratulations.
Well, thank you. And it's funny, I used to think when I made it a day, in the life of an alcoholic, if you make it a day, if you make it an hour, that's a major accomplishment because you're constantly wanting to drink. So to make it, 3.5 years or the 1,000 days is a great accomplishment, and I can't tell you the rewards I've gotten and the way that my life has changed since that point. So I'm very thankful, my friend.
Well, I'm thankful you're doing it. I'm thankful that you're revealing yourself on this podcast, which makes it special.
Well, thank you very much. And shoot, man, my blood is starting to boil a little bit because it's spring training time,
Oh, wow. That would have been a perfect question to ask you, so I'll ask you now. When you stop being a competitive, world-class athlete, how do you deal with that competitive? What do you do to stay when the blood starts boiling? How do you handle it?
I can think of
now. Yeah, that's
exactly, and that's that question is it's thinking about what you just asked me is like it's like it was yesterday. I remember my last year was 1986. Wow, that's a long time ago, but I still remember because in 1987 when spring training came around, it's almost like from the time you were forever you were getting ready to go and get ready to play ball and go to spring training. And when that wasn't a part of my life anymore, I can't tell you, it was like it was that habit that it was just gnawing at you that you had to get ready, you had to get going, and your mental self, your physical self just wanted to go. And it took a while. It actually took years to try to quell that or swell that and to try to turn the page and start a different chapter in my life.
Do you have anything athletically that you do, like golf or tennis, or did that you got some of that energy out on after you retired?
After I retired, I played quite a bit of golf, and then I wasn't one of those guys that made a lot of money, so I had to go out and work. So, I had a job, and I played some golf on the weekends. But then I found if as I got older, if I didn't get in some kind of an exercise routine, then, I just didn't feel good. I felt physically kind of, sluggish, and then also mentally. So if I got in there and got in on the exercise bike at home and lifted some weights and stuff like that, it kind of filled a little bit of that physical need that I was really longing for.
Gotcha. Hey, Randy, another great show with Randy Lerch. How about that?
Are we done already, Rob?
We're pretty close. Anything you want to leave? Anything you want to say? Anything you want to follow up on? You tell me.
I've been, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, or a couple shows ago, but my mind's been on Dusty because I know that I saw his interview. He made a manager with the Houston Astros after the big sign stealing scandal, and I saw his first interview, and of course he's got a lot of experience, but he handled the press and the questions like a pro, and I'm just really, really pulling for him because he's good people, and I want to see him do well.
I am too, and I hope it's not just a one-year thing where they bring back what's his name, the manager they fired after a year. I hope he.
That was A.J. Hinch. Yeah.
A.J. Hinch, who was a Stanford guy, as a matter of fact. My neck of the woods, your neck of the woods, Northern California, came up with the A's, and What do you think of that? Do you think the punishment of that cheating scandal was fair? Do you think it was severe? Just an opinion, not a right or wrong.
My take on the whole thing, and probably 90% of the people wouldn't agree with me, but from the time that I came up, we were always trying to find some kind of a up or advantage on our opponent, whether it be stealing signs from second base or, in my case, taking amphetamines, and Barry Bonds taking, what was it? The
clear.
Yeah, the clear. And, and I guess these guys figured out a way to get an advantage on the other teams, and they did it. And people didn't like it. It was cheating, and so they got spanked for it. And I think that the punishment fit the crime because they did take it to another level. And I think we'll get back to the good old days where we just did it. We stole signs from second base and stuff like that.
Yeah, or from the dugout within the field. It isn't something that you do electronically and that sort of thing. Great take, Randy, my friend. We'll do this again next week, back at our regular time next week, and hopefully we'll have a guest. You have a very special one in mind.